The courtroom in Washington, D.C. hummed with a venomous energy, like a coiled snake ready to strike. Reporters crammed the benches, their pens scratching furiously, while spectators whispered in tight clusters. At the center of it all stood Elon Musk, his sharp jaw clenched, eyes burning with a mix of defiance and disdain. He adjusted his tailored suit, a navy blue armor for the battle ahead, and shot a glance at the bench where Judge Amy Barrett sat. Her face was a mask of icy composure, but her eyes, narrowed ever so slightly, betrayed a flicker of contempt. This wasn't just a legal dispute. It was personal, and the air crackled with their mutual loathing. Musk was here to fight a new federal regulation that capped the data social media platforms could collect, a rule he claimed choked innovation and violated free speech. His platform X was his empire, a digital frontier where he played God, and he wasn't about to let some bureaucrats or a judge he deemed out of touch clip his wings. Barrett, appointed to the Supreme Court but presiding over this high-profile district case by special assignment, saw Musk as a spoiled titan who thought his wealth and ideas put him above the law. Their first encounter weeks ago during a pretrial hearing had set the tone. Musk's sarcastic quip about government overreach had drawn a biting retort from Barrett about billionaires' tantrums. Now, the tension was a live wire. "Your Honor," Musk's lead attorney began, a slick man named Grayson, "this regulation is a direct assault on the First Amendment. X facilitates global discourse, and restricting its data collection cripples its ability to serve the public." His voice was smooth, but Musk's fidgeting betrayed his impatience. He leaned forward, interrupting. "It's not just about data. It's about freedom. You can't regulate truth out of existence." Barrett's gavel cracked like a whip. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice low and sharp, "you'll speak through counsel or you'll be held in contempt. This isn't your boardroom." The room sucked in a collective breath. Musk's lips twitched, a smirk masking his fury. "My apologies, Judge. I just assumed clarity was welcome here." The jab landed and Barrett's jaw tightened. "Clarity is welcome," she shot back, "but theatrics are not. Control yourself or I'll control you." The gallery buzzed, and Musk's attorney scrambled to regain focus, presenting charts on X's data practices. But Musk's eyes never left Barrett. He saw her as a gatekeeper of a rotting system, a woman hiding behind robes to enforce rules that stifled progress. Barrett, in turn, viewed Musk as a dangerous narcissist, his rhetoric a veneer for unchecked power. Their mutual disdain was palpable, each word a spark threatening to ignite the room. As Grayson droned on, Barrett cut him off. "Counselor, your client's platform has been linked to misinformation campaigns that destabilize public trust. You're arguing freedom, but what about responsibility?" Her tone was accusatory, aimed at Musk. He couldn't stay silent. "Responsibility?" he snapped, rising. "You're blaming me for people's choices? That's rich, coming from someone who's never built anything but a career in bureaucracy." The courtroom erupted. Barrett's gavel slammed again, her face flushed with controlled rage. "Sit down, Mr. Musk, or you'll be removed," she barked. "You're not above this court, no matter how many rockets you launch." Musk sat, but his glare could have burned through steel. "And you're not above reason," he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. Barrett leaned forward, her voice ablade. "Test me again, and you'll regret it." The session adjourned for a recess, but the hostility lingered like smoke. Musk stormed into the hallway, his team trailing like nervous shadows. Barrett remained at the bench, her calm facade cracking as she scribbled notes. Both knew this was only the beginning. Was a circus. The case wasn't just about shouting questions and cameras flashing like gunfire. It was a clash of wills. Elon Musk pushed through the crowd, neither would bend without his face a storm cloud, ignoring the microphones thrust toward him. His team hustled to keep up, but he was already barking orders into his phone, his voice a low growl. "Get me everything on Barrett's rulings, her speeches, her biases. She's not playing fair, and I'm not losing to a sanctimonious judge." Inside, Amy Barrett had retreated to her chambers, her robes discarded, but her fury still simmering. She poured a glass of water, her hands steady but her mind racing. Musk's arrogance was a slap in the face, and she wasn't about to let him turn her courtroom into his personal stage. Back in session, the atmosphere was a pressure cooker. Musk's attorney, Grayson, called a tech expert to testify about X's data algorithms, painting them as essential for user engagement and innovation. The expert, a nervous professor named Lynn, stumbled through jargon-heavy explanations, but Barrett wasn't buying it. "Dr. Lynn," she interjected, her tone cutting, "you're saying this data collection is benign, but your own research links it to targeted manipulation during elections. Care to reconcile that?" Lynn faltered, and Musk's fist clenched under the table. He leaned toward Grayson, whispering, "She's twisting everything. This is a witch hunt." Barrett's eyes flicked to Musk, catching his murmur. "Something to share, Mr. Musk," she said, her voice dripping with challenge. Musk stood, ignoring Grayson's panicked tug on his sleeve. "Yeah, I've got something. You're not even pretending to be impartial. You've got an agenda. And it's written all over your face." The gallery gasped, and Grayson's head dropped into his hands. Barrett's lips curled into a cold smile, but her eyes were fire. "You're out of line, Mr. Musk. One more outburst, and you'll be fined. This is my courtroom, not your echo chamber." Musk sat, but his defiance was electric. "Your courtroom," he muttered, "but my fight." Barrett heard it and leaned forward, her voice a razor. "Keep talking, and you'll fight from a cell." The threat hung heavy, and the room fell silent, every eye darting between the two. Grayson scrambled to redirect, calling another witness, but the damage was done. The case was a sideshow now. The real battle was Musk versus Barrett, and neither was backing down. The prosecution, led by a steely government attorney named Carla Ruiz, seized the moment. Ruiz presented evidence of X's data practices, including leaked internal memos, where Musk allegedly pushed for aggressive user tracking to boost ad revenue. "This isn't about freedom," Ruiz argued, her voice sharp. "It's about profit, and Mr. Musk's willingness to exploit users to get it." Musk's face reddened, and he whispered to Grayson, "They're lying, and she's letting them." Barrett, catching his agitation, raised an eyebrow. "Problem, Mr. Musk?" she asked, her tone mocking. "Or are you just allergic to accountability?" Musk's restraint snapped. "Accountability?" he shot back, rising again. "You're lecturing me while you sit there, smug, acting like you're above it all? You don't get it. X is the future, and you're stuck in the past, clinging to your dusty rulebook." The courtroom exploded in murmurs, and Barrett's gavel slammed so hard it echoed. "That's it," she roared. "You're fined $10,000 for contempt. One more word and it's detention. Try me, Elon." The use of his first name was deliberate, a jab at his ego. Musk's eyes blazed, but he sat, his silence a coiled threat. As the session broke, Musk stormed out, his team trailing like a defeated army. Barrett remained at the bench, her composure a thin veneer over her rage. She knew Musk was pushing, her testing her authority, and she hated how it rattled her. But she also knew the law was on her side, and she'd make him feel its weight. Musk, pacing in a private room, was already plotting his next move, his mind a whirlwind of strategy and spite. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The courtroom was a battlefield, its air thick with the stench of unspoken grudges. Elon Musk sat at the plaintiff's table, his posture rigid, his eyes locked on Judge Amy Barrett, like a predator sizing up prey. The fine she'd slapped on. Him burned in his gut, not for the money but for the humiliation. He wasn't used to being cowed, and her smug authority was a splinter under his skin. Barrett, behind the bench, felt the weight of his stare but met it with a steely gaze of her own. She'd dealt with egomaniacs before, but Musk's relentless defiance was testing her patience to its breaking point. The case was spiraling, and the next clash was inevitable. Carla Ruiz, the government's attorney, was in her element, presenting a damning witness, a former ex-executive named Tara Voss, who'd turned whistleblower. Voss, her voice steady but her hands trembling, described a culture of reckless data, harvesting under Musk's direct orders. "He called privacy concerns noise," Voss testified, her eyes avoiding Musk's. "He said users were too stupid to care what we did with their data." The gallery buzzed and Musk's jaw twitched. his fingers drumming a furious rhythm on the table. Grayson objected, calling the testimony hearsay, but Barrett overruled with a curt, "I'll allow it. Let's hear the truth." Her emphasis on truth was a needle aimed at Musk, and he felt it. Musk leaned toward Grayson, his whisper venomous. "She's eating this up. She wants me to bleed." Grayson nodded, urging restraint, but Musk was past caring. When Voss finished, Grayson cross-examined, trying to paint her as a disgruntled employee. Voss held firm, her voice rising. "I left because I couldn't stomach it anymore. He's not a visionary, he's a bully." Musk couldn't stay silent. "You're a liar," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You begged for your job, and now you're selling me out for a headline." The courtroom erupted, and Barrett's gavel was a thunderclap. "Mr. Musk," she bellowed, her face flushed with fury, "you're in contempt again. $20,000 this time, and I'm warning you, I'm done with your tantrums." Musk laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that cut through the chaos. "Fine me $1 million, Judge. You think I care? You're not judging me. You're crucifying me because you hate what I stand for." Barrett's eyes narrowed to slits. "What you stand for," she snapped. "Arrogance, lawlessness? You're not a martyr, Mr. Musk. You're a man in my courtroom, and you will respect it." The gallery was a sea of gasps and whispers, every word between them a spark in a powder. "Keg!" Barrett's voice dropped, cold and deliberate. "One more disruption and you're in cuffs. I don't care who you are." Musk leaned back, his smirk a mask for the rage boiling inside. "Cuffs? That's your style, isn't it? Control everyone. Shut down anything that challenges you." Barrett's hand twitched on the gavel, but she held back, her silence a warning. Louder than any shout. Ruiz capitalized, introducing emails where Musk allegedly mocked regulators as dinosaurs and vowed to bury the data cap law. The evidence was a gut punch, and Musk's team scrambled to counter, but the momentum was against them. Barrett's rulings favored the government, each decision a brick in the wall closing around Musk. He felt it, the noose tightening, and it drove him to a reckless edge. During a recess, he cornered Grayson in a hallway, his voice a low snarl. "She's rigging this. We need to go harder, expose her bias." Grayson hesitated, warning of backlash, but Musk's eyes were wild. "I don't lose, Grayson. Not to her." Back in session, Musk's team called a surprise witness, a libertarian, senator who argued the regulation was government overreach. Barrett listened, her face unreadable, but when the senator veered into praising Musk as a hero of free speech, she cut in. "This isn't a rally, Senator. Stick to the law." Musk snorted, loud enough to draw her glare. "Problem?" "Mr. Musk?" she asked, her tone a dare. "Just admiring your consistency," he shot back. "You shut down anyone who doesn't bow." The room held its breath, waiting for her response, but Barrett only smiled, a predator's grin, and moved. On, the war was far from over. The courtroom was a furnace, every glance and gesture between Elon Musk and Judge Amy Barrett stoking the flames. Musk's smirk had hardened into a scowl, his hands gripping the table as if to keep himself from lunging. Barrett's composure was a fortress, but cracks showed in the tight set of her mouth, the way her eyes flashed when Musk's voice cut through the proceedings. The case was nearing its climax, and the air was thick with the promise of a reckoning. Reporters leaned forward, sensing blood, while spectators held their breath, caught in the gravity of a duel that felt less like law and more like war. Grayson, Musk's attorney, was on his last legs, presenting a desperate final argument. He leaned heavily on X's role in global communication, framing the data regulation as a death knell for innovation. "This law doesn't protect users," Grayson insisted, his voice hoarse. "It shackles progress, and Mr. Musk is fighting for a future where ideas can thrive." The words were passionate, but they landed flat under Barrett's unyielding stare. She jotted notes, her pen a metronome of judgment, and when Grayson finished, she didn't hesitate. "Counselor, your client's vision of progress seems to include unchecked power. The law exists to balance that. Your argument ignores the harm." Musk's restraint shattered. "Harm?" he barked, standing so fast his chair scraped the floor. "The only harm here is you strangling free speech because you can't stand someone challenging your control." The courtroom froze, A collective inhale as all eyes swung to Barrett. Her face was stone, but her voice was molten. "Mr. Musk, you've crossed every line I've drawn. You're in contempt again, $50,000, and I'm this close to having you removed." She held up 2 fingers, an inch apart, her eyes boring into his. "Sit down." Musk didn't sit. He stepped forward, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "You think you can silence me with fines? You're not a judge, you're a tyrant in a robe, and I'm not bowing to you." The gallery erupted, shouts and gasps drowning out Grayson's pleas for calm. Barrett's gavel slammed. A gunshot in the chaos. "Enough," she roared. "Bailiff, escort Mr. Musk out now." 2 officers moved toward him, but Musk raised a hand, his eyes never leaving Barrett's. "I'll walk myself out," he snarled. "But this isn't over. You're not winning this." The room was a maelstrom as Musk strode out, reporters scrambling to follow. Barrett called a recess, her hands trembling slightly as she gathered her notes. In her chambers, she paced, the weight of Musk's words clawing at her. He'd called her a tyrant, and though she'd never admit it, the accusations stung. She was a guardian of the law, not a dictator, but Musk's defiance made her question how far she'd go to prove it. Meanwhile, Musk in a private room was a caged animal, pacing and cursing. "She's made this personal," he told Grayson, his voice raw. "I'm not letting her bury me." Back in session, the government's attorney, Ruiz, delivered a blistering closing argument, painting Musk as a reckless profiteer whose platform endangered democracy. "This case isn't about innovation," Ruiz said, her voice ringing. "It's about a man who thinks he's above the law." Barrett nodded slightly, her face unreadable, but Musk's absence left a void, his energy still haunting the room. Grayson's rebuttal was weak, overshadowed by Musk's earlier outburst, and when he sat, the outcome felt sealed. As the day ended, Barrett retired to her chambers, the weight of the impending ruling heavy on her shoulders. She knew Musk would fight to the end, but she was ready to deliver a verdict that would cut him down. Musk, meanwhile, was already planning his next move, his mind a storm of defiance and strategy. The final showdown was coming, and neither would yield until one stood victorious. The courtroom was a crucible, its silence deafening as the final day dawned. Spectators packed the benches, their whispers a low hum, while reporters poised like vultures, sensing the endgame. Elon Musk sat at the plaintiff's table, his face a mask of barely contained fury, his suit pristine but his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights plotting his comeback. He'd returned after his ejection, fined and chastened but unbowed, his presence a challenge to the woman who dared to cage him. Judge Amy Barrett took the bench, her robes a symbol of authority she wielded like a blade. Her expression was serene, but her pulse raced, knowing this moment would define the battle that had consumed them both. Barrett wasted no time. "This court has heard extensive arguments," she began, her voice clear and commanding. "The plaintiff, X Corporation, argues that the federal data regulation infringes on free speech and innovation. The government contends it protects public interest against unchecked corporate power." Her eyes flicked to Musk, who sat rigid, his gaze a silent dare. "After careful review," she continued, "this court finds the regulation constitutional and necessary. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed. Judgment is for the defendant." The room exploded in murmurs, but Barrett wasn't done. She leaned forward, her voice sharpening. "Mr. Musk, your platform's contributions are undeniable, but so is its potential for harm. You've argued freedom, but freedom without restraint breeds chaos. This court will not indulge your belief that you're above the law." The words were a whip, and Musk's face flushed, his hands clenching into fists. He stood, ignoring Grayson's frantic gesture. "This isn't justice," he said, his voice low but searing. "This is you flexing your power because you can't stand mine." Barrett's smile was cold, triumphant. "You're wrong, Mr. Musk. This is the law winning over ego, and if you think your tantrums intimidate me, you're mistaken." The gallery gasped, and Musk laughed, a harsh, defiant sound. "Keep laughing, Judge. You've won your little game, but you can't stop progress. I'll fight this, and I'll win because I always do." Barrett's eyes glittered with disdain. "You've lost today, Elon, and you'll lose again if..." You keep defying the system that holds us all accountable. Sit down or I'll have you removed one last time." Musk sat, but his glare was a promise of vengeance. The courtroom buzzed as Barrett adjourned, her gavel a final punctuation on her. Victory. Reporters surged toward Musk, but he shoved past, his team trailing like a defeated retinue. In the hallway he paused, his voice a snarl as he spoke to Grayson. "Appeal it. Every court, every judge. She thinks she's broken me, but she's just started a war." His words were bravado, but the sting of defeat burned deep, a wound he'd carry like a badge. Barrett, in her chambers, removed her robes, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in weeks. She'd faced Musk's fire and emerged unscathed, her authority intact. Colleagues would praise her, the media would dissect her ruling, but in this moment she felt a quiet triumph. She'd stared down a titan and won, not just for the law, but for herself. Musk's accusations, his taunts, had tested her, but she'd proven her strength. The law was her shield, and she'd wielded it with precision. Outside, the world spun on. Musk's loss was a headline, his defiance a rallying cry for his supporters, but the verdict stood. Barrett's laugh, that sharp, victorious smile, would haunt him, a reminder that even he could fall. For the spectators, the reporters, the millions who'd follow the story, it was a spectacle of power clashing and breaking. Barrett emerged as the victor, her name etched in the annals of a case that had gripped the nation. Musk, battered but unyielding, would rise again, but today belonged to her. The story ended not with a question but a resolution, a moment of justice that felt complete. Barrett's triumph was the law's, and in the courtroom's fading echo, her victory rang clear.